Okay, good day, our fans, good day, our followers, and good day, our subscribers all over the world. I welcome you to another episode of the Late Go podcast. As your host, my name is Samson. I'm a Milan fan, and together with me on today's podcast, I have Yinka and I have Ahmed. Guys, welcome to today's podcast. Some of your predictions from last week have gone upside down, but I welcome you all the same.
Good to be back.
It's good to be here again.
Okay, it's good to be here again. Ahmed, are you better today?
Yeah, good. Very well. Ready to
Your
go.
team plays tomorrow. Anyways,
I'm confident. I'm confident going into that game.
yeah, okay. We'll see what happens. It's been raining goals across Europe today. Bournemouth hosted and decimated Nottingham Forest. City just showed Chelsea why they are the champions. Arsenal to dig deep to win away at Wolves. And Liverpool continued their march to the title. In Italy, a Juventus run of 21 unbeaten games came to an end
Beating league games
at the hands of Romelu Lukaku, the man, the legend.
at the hands of Antonio Conte.
It's Lukaku that I know. I don't know of Conte. Juve's unbeaten run has ended today with a defeat away at Napoli. Atlanta won their first match in five. They won away at Kolo. Atletico Madrid drew today, and Real Madrid are currently leading by a goal to nil. We'll also be giving you the roundup of the Champions League matches that happened during the midweek, which saw the Titanic match at Parc des Princes, where PSG came back from 2 goals down to beat Manchester City. That leaves Manchester City outside of the qualification zone.
Yeah.
While PSG are barely hanging on in the qualification zone themselves. Today also we'll be having a player focus. We'll be talking about the African king, Mohamed Salah, the 7th all-time highest goal scorer in the English Premier League. Is the 4th highest goal scorer for Liverpool, and the 2nd highest goal scoring foreigner in the Premier League. Quite some achievement. Also, we'll be having a coach focus. We'll be talking about Thiago Motta of Juventus. The team looks to be bigger than him. At least that is my opinion. While we'll also be having our stay or go section, we'll be doing stay or go for 2 clubs, Juventus and Manchester City. And for the first time, we'll be having the Late Go podcast, Bet Tips, where Yinka and Ahmed are going to their pundit skills on display for our followers to key into. So I'll be starting in Italy. Juventus unbeaten. 21 matches has come to an end. Away at Napoli. Yinka, what does that victory say for the league table and for Juventus mentality?
Well, first, I would like to say that probably for the first time this season, I'm actually worried that Inter will not be winning the Scudetto this season. I think that Napoli has exceeded my expectation. Although I still think that we need to wait until the middle of February or thereabouts to see how things pan out. But two or three of the top games that I thought that they would struggle in, they navigated those games with relative ease. So I'm actually quite worried. For Juventus, however, I'm not particularly surprised. I mentioned last week that this game had all the, would I say, factors. All the factors were there that could, potentially cause Juventus to lose their first league game of the season, and that is what happened. Although I must say that at some point during the game, I was really hopeful because of the way that they approached the first half. They just came into the second half a completely different team. Napoli completely decimated them, and from the point that Napoli got the equalizer, it just seemed like a one way street, really. It's interesting to see where Juventus go from here. I'm curious to see how they move forward from there, because we've always wanted to know how they would react to a loss. Since the season started, they've always been grinding out draws, last minute equalizers, and a win here or there. But this is the first time that they're losing in the league, and we just have to wait and see how they react next week.
Ahmed, Kolo Muani, what do you have to say about his debut today?
Went up for him personally. Every player will always want to make their debuts with a goal. Witness that over in Etihad also. Mamush made his debut and he tried as much as possible to get.
Ahmed, can you speak louder? I'm struggling to hear you.
Unfortunately for him, he couldn't end his day like Kolo Muani did.
Ahmed, I'm not sure I can hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
All right. So, like I was saying, it is mixed feelings actually. He had a good game, considering he is new in the system, a new league, his very first game. He got the opening goal in a big match like that, Juventus against Napoli. But unfortunately, they lost the game. Generally speaking, for Juventus, they started well, but going into the game, they lost their way. Napoli came back stronger in the second half, more inspired, fighting better for second balls, you understand, and they got a victory they actually deserve. For those that have been following our podcast, they shouldn't be surprised by that loss, because it was mentioned here last week that they are likely going to lose that game. And if you followed Juventus'
Even though Inter was praying against that.
If you had followed Juventus' performance throughout the season, you would see that they would eventually run out of luck, because they've drawn some games in fashions that are quite comical. I can remember the game against Venezia. They had no luck on their side to get such an ending. So they eventually lost the game. So they need to pick themselves back from there and forge ahead.
Inter, what does the arrival of Kolo Muani do for Dusan Vlahovic?
Well, this is just a personal opinion. I think that by going for Kolo Muani, the writing is already on the wall. Thiago Motta prefers the striker to drop deep, link up play, contribute to the build-up. All of these things are things that Dusan Vlahovic struggles to really do quite well. I know people have mentioned that Vlahovic is a really good finisher, even though I struggle to see, how he really
Stop that.
In terms of overall play, I do not think that he offers Thiago Motta what Thiago Motta wants, which is why they went for Kolo Muani. If anyone has seen the game against Napoli today, you would see that there's quite a difference between the way Muani plays and the way that Vlahovic likes to play. And considering just that single sample, I think that going forward, Muani might actually be Thiago Motta's preferred striking option, which really says a lot about whether Vlahovic will be staying at Juventus or not. I know that there are interests from several clubs, maybe Arsenal and some other clubs.
Do you see Vlahovic moving in January?
January. Well, I think that Juve will sell him if they get a good offer. And whether there's a club willing to make that offer in January is a completely different matter.
Arsenal might be interested. I don't know how solid their interest is.
But Arsenal, for a late Milan interest in case they don't get their first option in Jimenez.
I hope that is fake news.
I think
that is fake news.
That completely caught me off guard. I think that Milan might want to do a deal, maybe late in the window. I do not know if Juventus would want to do a deal with Milan, considering the fact that they are fighting for similar objectives this season. Arsenal might want to consider other options before Vlahovic, especially for the price that the guys offer. I think Juventus are willing to sell him for about 50 or 70 million. A price which I strongly believe is way too high for what Vlahovic offers.
Mamouche went for 75.
Well, Mamouche. Well, it's difficult to say. Mamouche is actually in form, So you can still try to justify the price tag, especially like I always say, when a small club is selling to a big club, the price is usually high, especially when it's a big club like Manchester City,
Yes.
PSG, Real Madrid. The small club sees it as an opportunity to, cover for certain financial lapses that or financial woes that they might have in the club. They might not get to sell a player like that again, in the nearest future. So when an opportunity to sell a player comes and the player is actually doing very well, they usually stick a very big price on him. But for Vlahovic to what's it called, Arsenal, you could argue that Juventus also need the money. But when
Yeah.
two big clubs are negotiating, there's usually this room for maneuver. Arsenal can actually say we can get someone else for quite cheaper than what you're actually willing to collect from us or to accept from
Or
us.
they will
I
just
think
or they will just continue with Havertz
or they could just
and
continue with
pray.
Havertz. I think that there are other options. There's Sesko, even though his
Eucharist.
finishing leaves quite a little to be, there's Gyökeres as well. But with Vlahovic, I'm not particularly sure if Arsenal will be willing to drop, that big box on him. But we just have to see what happens.
Well said. Let us go to the Vitality Stadium in England, where Bournemouth hosted Forest and decimated them. Last week, Bournemouth practically defeated Newcastle, and we didn't expect them to follow it up with this kind of win. But 5-0 thrashing of Nottingham Forest is no small feat, considering how good Forest have been so far. Is this the beginning of Forest's exit from the top four? Ahmed, quickly.
I wouldn't say that is the beginning of their exit because this is not a one-off thing. Bournemouth are red hot at the moment. They've taken everybody to the cleaners. They are taking everybody apart, anyone on their way. Just last week, they did the same thing to Newcastle. They also won their game against Chelsea, against City. You understand? You can continue to name them. They've been unbeaten in their last 11 games. I think this is their 11th straight win, if I'm not mistaken. So on Nottingham Forest part, it is the fashion, the manner in which they lost is quite bad, given what they are gunning for themselves. You wouldn't want to lose by 5 goals to 0. But Bournemouth are just red hot at the moment. They are taking anybody to the cleaners. So you shouldn't, because of that, weigh yourself down. I believe Nottingham are still very much in line with what they are trying to achieve. Whatever they actually end up with at the end of the season, I believe they've done a commendable job so far. For Bournemouth at the moment, I must say they would also take their chances against.
Okay, Nika, Forest host Brighton next week. Brighton lost to Everton today. Do you see Forest bouncing back?
I guess we just have to wait and see. No one expected that Nottingham Forest would go the rest of the season without losing any game. A loss was always expected at some point. It's just that the manner in which the loss has come is what is now making the news. If you had lost today by, say, 1-0 or 2-1, no one would really make a fuss about it. But losing 5-0 to a very informed Bournemouth, it has to be said. What is now raising eyebrow? Now, against Brighton, this is a team that has flattered to deceive a lot. They have this beautiful style of play. They're always, looking to impose their system again on opponents. But the results haven't been there per se this season. If I remember very well, I might have to check. I think last week was probably their first win in like the last, say, 8 or 9 games, and then they've gone back to
They
losing
they
again.
rob the rich and give to the poor.
Exactly. It's difficult to say what to expect, especially when you are facing a Nottingham Forest rather, that is not really used to a situation like this. Nottingham Forest before this season was a team that would put so many losses on the table and then get just a few wins to maybe shore it up. But this season they've actually put a lot of wins on the table, and then we're yet to see how they are going to react to the single loss that has now come in to break that sequence of good results that they've had. It's an interesting one to keep an eye on, and we just have to wait and see what happens next in the next game.
Manchester City, they are back in the top four, and they did it in style this evening. It was a debut to forget for Kushanov, who gifted Chelsea the first goal with a mistimed back pass. They came back from that and they went on to win the match 3-1. Do you see this as perhaps a turning point? I know we've been asked this question over and over.
I
We
was
think they will
going to say
turn
that.
the corner.
We keep talking about Man City.
We think they will turn the corner, then we take the next left again. But then, do you see this as a genuine turning point?
Well, games like this actually serve. They are often the games that might either trigger a run of successive wins, or when you lose them, it could be the kind of game that will make you start to doubt yourself and your caliber as a team. Like you mentioned earlier, we've spoken about Man City quite a few times on this podcast, and even though we have some of our panelists, some of them are not here today, that believe that Manchester City have not turned the corner, it's beginning to look like they might actually, be getting themselves into the groove again, for lack of a better word. They're not quite there yet. They're not quite the Man City that we know. Unfortunately, I was not able to watch the game, with Chelsea today. I was more focused on the Juventus, the Napoli versus Juventus game. But I saw the highlights, I saw the goals, and I saw the 3 goals that they scored were mostly route one goals.
Yes.
The first one was a long ball from Gundogan over the top. The second one was over the top as well from
Ederson
to Haaland. And then the third one, I think Haaland did a bit of
hold up, Haaland hold up.
And then he released. So it was mostly route one. So we would not say that that City that we've come to familiarize ourselves with is back. But they're putting some good results on the table, draws here. At least the losses are now, way less than it used to be over the last, two.
Okay. Let's have won just one match in 2025. That was last week at home to Wolves. Against the top 6 teams, they've beaten only Tottenham. They've lost to Man City home and away. I think they've lost to Liverpool and they've drawn 2 other matches against the top 6 teams. Ahmed, I'm sure you followed that match today.
Yes.
Do you see Chelsea slipping out of the top 4 race?
The way they are going, they're actually headed in that direction because they've been unconvincing if you see the manner in which they lost the game. It is meant to be a game between 2 struggling sides, so to say, because Man City are actually not up there at the moment. So I expected a bit of reaction. I expected a bit of reaction from either side. You understand? Let's use this game, get a win to boost morale. So I saw that from City's side, not from Chelsea. They got their only goal through an early mistake from their very newest signing. So after that, they never really came close to scoring or making City uncomfortable. The only times City looked uncomfortable were times that they made some personal error. You understand? So Ronaldo had a field day on the left side, bombing forward from defense. Chelsea had no answer for that. Man City literally did everything they wanted. You understand? So the manner in which they lost, they hardly put up any response or fight. So if they continue that way, I see them actually dropping out of the top.
Inca, Guardiola of City, what a player. I said Guardiola of City, what a player.
Yes.
Well, it's quite a player. I think if I were to compare anyone to Alessandro Bastoni of Inter, I think that's the first player that comes to mind. The way he runs that left flank is actually very comfortable on the ball.
He dribbles so well.
They had no answer for him at all.
He's also a very good defender. So in terms of overall gameplay, you would have to rate him as one of the best in the role.
Okay, I want to end EPL discussion on Liverpool. It's obvious that Liverpool have one hand and one leg on the trophy. We've said this over and over. We don't see, barring any divine intervention, Liverpool should go on to win the league. Now, my question is this. This squad has not added any player of repute in the summer. Perhaps, do you believe Jurgen Klopp could have done better with this squad, at least last summer?
Well, it's difficult to say. I think that if you're going to compare Jurgen Klopp time at Liverpool, you have to also consider, if you're going to look at Jurgen Klopp time at Liverpool, you also have to consider where he met the team when he joined. Liverpool were barely scrapping for top 4, top 5, top 6 positions at the time that Jurgen Klopp joined them. And Jurgen Klopp, I wouldn't say single-handedly, because they had a very good team of backroom staff that supported him, or that were behind him as well. But Jurgen Klopp basically was one of the people responsible for turning the fortunes of Liverpool around. They won the Premier League, they won the Champions League, and I think they won a number of cups, maybe a couple of cups.
It led them to the Europa League final in his very first season.
Exactly. Should he have done better than he did with this squad? I would say no, because he really did as much as you would expect a team like Liverpool to do. I think he made over 90 points in 2 different seasons. It was just
Made
unfortunate
99
that
one season,
exactly. It
and
was
he
just
lost the league.
unfortunate that he was fighting for the league against a demon of a team, and that's Manchester City, Pep Guardiola's Man City.
The fear of
Any
Guardiola.
other season, 99 points would have been sufficient to win the league on both, okay, or 90-something points would be sufficient to win the league. Now, considering what Arne Slot is doing with the club, I think it's a matter of motivation, really. The Jurgen Klopp has left, and there was a lot of debate as to whether Liverpool would be the same Liverpool that we've come to know over the last few years under Arne Slot. I think that Arne Slot may have channeled into that and used that as some sort of motivation for those boys, which is why, they may be performing, at the level that they are now performing. So I do not think that Jurgen Klopp, really messed up. If Arne Slot had met a Pep Guardiola Manchester City, the same Manchester City that Jurgen Klopp had to fight with, if he had met that Man City this season, I'm pretty sure that he would probably be in second place or in third place at this moment.
Ahmed, any contrary opinion?
Yeah, kudos should also be given to the Liverpool management team, because way before the end of Jurgen Klopp's tenure last season, they knew what they wanted in his replacements. They went in for Arne Slot early on. We never saw any case of having too many options. They knew who they wanted, which was Arne Slot, and they went in for him. Now that is proven to be a very right decision, because he has actually hit the ground running. He's doing really amazingly well. Currently, I think his win percent rate is about 79%, which is really, really impressive for a first timer in the English Premier League. So I would add to the fact that
it's impressive for any coach, regardless of whether it's the first time or not.
Definitely.
Unbeaten in the Champions League also. 7 matches.
He's at the top of the log.
No draws. He's at the top of the log. 21 points.
I'll give that kudos to the Liverpool management team.
Nika, aside from Mohamed Salah now, that man is on another planet. If you had to pick another standout player and in that Liverpool team, who would you pick?
Well, for me, I would say Gravenberch.
God bless you.
I think that he has added a lot of steel to that midfield. If you remember the last time that Liverpool won the Premier League, I think they had, apart from the front three of Mane, Firmino, and Salah, I think they had Wijnaldum, Henderson,
Fabinho,
and Fabinho in midfield. There was this perfect combination of steel, lungs, that's box to box, and a bit of creativity. After that season that they won, they sort of lost a bit of spark, even though they still had all 3 players. And I think it was mostly down to the fact that the player that was supposed to offer still in midfield lost form, and that was Fabinho and
Fabinho.
mostly Fabinho. So he lost a bit of form. But since they got Henderson, he's returned the steal to that midfield. He's complemented the other midfield as well. And even when Liverpool are not particularly playing well, you can be sure that, he's always there to mop up whatever threats that opponents are, are putting. And he's quite good on the ball as well. So it's always an advantage when you have your defensive midfielder doing his primary duty and then adding a bit of extra spice with being good on the ball and spreading a bit of passes around.
It's important to note that Gravenberch is not a defensive midfielder naturally.
Yes.
Yeah, but he plays the defensive midfield role for them.
Yes. I'm just stating that
He's just adding that as a
important to
bonus.
note that he has developed himself to that level. He's a very fine player, and
That's how you know it's very good players from just Aslan.
very high IQ.
Aslan.
No, now from where to where now? Yeah, no. Stray bullets are not allowed. We are not yet in the section of stray bullets. Okay, quickly, let's just go to La Liga. There's not much to discuss about La Liga. Madrid are cruising. They are 2 goals ahead now. 4 points ahead of Atletico Madrid, who drew today. I don't know what's happening with Simeone, but the league looks like Madrid's to lose.
Something is happening to Simeone.
Barring any unfortunate loss of form, Mbappe is picking form at the right time.
Yes.
Everybody should be concerned, especially in Europe.
Mention that because it looks like it's going under the radar. Mbappe is actually picking form and is scoring on a more consistent basis now.
Yes.
Especially in Europe, we should be scared. Ancelotti has threatened us that it will be at the final in June, and it's up to us to stop him. It's been a fine run in La Liga. Hopefully, Madrid can keep it up. Next, we'll go to the Champions League roundup. They did not play 2-2. In fact,
it was 2-2 for a while.
I almost put my house rent on that. It was 2-2 for a while.
It was 2-2 for a while. It was 2-2 for about with about 14 minutes left on the clock before Manchester City capitulated.
Is that what you will tell those that place their money on it?
I did not give my prediction for people to put their money on it. Naturally, if I predict a 2-2 and you're going to put your money on it, I expect that you play both teams to score or an over 2.5. Not the correct
that happened.
By full allowance on that prediction.
It was an interesting fixture because for the first 45 minutes, it seemed like there was no action. And the second half started. Within 10 minutes, there were 3 goals. It looked like City were running away with it, only for Bakula to say, no, you are not going anywhere with these 3 points. Inka, what does this do? How does this prepare us for the last match day?
We mentioned there last week that this version of the Champions League, this new version of the Champions League, would actually be more interesting than the older version.
This Squid Game of Champions League.
Exactly. I think that for City, it's a do-or-die affair for them in that last game. I think they're playing a Club Brugge, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I've been reading that Club Brugge is yet to lose a game in, say, 15 games. If I'm not mistaken. 19 matches. That's a do-or-die game. But City would be at home, if I'm not mistaken as well, because I'm yet to check the fixture.
They'll be at Etihad.
Yes, I expect them to. Because they are at Etihad, I expect them to pick 3 points in that game. It will be tough. But like we also mentioned earlier, this win against Chelsea would serve as a morale booster as well. And I think that they should have just enough to take 3 points that would help them qualify for the playoff round. For PSG, they will be facing Stuttgart. Is that one of the games that I read that a draw would favor both teams? If I'm not mistaken.
They are both on 10 points.
So both teams basically need a draw to qualify. Well, I've seen this movie many times in my almost 3 decades of watching football. And I know that if both teams need a draw, then it's very possible that both teams will most likely play a draw.
Okay. The two of you are going to give me your predictions scores and wins in the late group podcast betting tips section. But let me throw a spanner in the last match day fixtures. There is Dynamo Kiev. Dynamo Kiev is 26th on the table. They are on 8th. Sorry, Dynamo Zagreb. Dynamo Zagreb. They are 26th on the log and they are on 8 points. They host Milan on the last day. A win takes them to 11 points. A win for Dynamo and a draw between Stuttgart and PSG threatens both Stuttgart and PSG.
Oh, wow.
Ahmed, do you see an unforeseen drama on the last day? Let me start with, do you think Dynamo can even beat Milan?
I don't think so. Reason being that as much as Milan has been impressive so far in the Champions League, they need to seal their efforts with the win that day, because with anything other than a win, they risk the chance of not making the automatic qualifying spot. You understand? They might risk going to playoff. So they will definitely come in with rampage, you understand, to make sure they seal their efforts. So that way, I don't see Dynamo getting a win. The most they would get is, let's say, disappoint Milan and get a draw.
So, a City win against PSG and a draw against Stuttgart, and a City win against Bruges and a draw for Stuttgart and PSG should see City, Stuttgart, and PSG qualify. Is that what we are saying? Or is that what we see happening, Yinka?
Well, like I said earlier, if both teams need a draw, then it's very likely that both teams would most likely get a draw. But
Gentleman agreement.
Of this additional part of the equation that involves Dinamo Zagreb and Milan. For that game, it's difficult to say, especially when you're going away to this team. I'm not quite sure the games that Milan have around that time. I'm a very strong believer in energy, motivation, apart from the tactical side of football. And I think that if Milan have games that would involve, expending a lot of energy, especially before the Dinamo game. I'm not sure when they're okay. Dinamo is just next week.
Dinamo is this week.
So they're playing Parma.
So Milan will play Parma tomorrow and play Inter immediately after Dynamo.
Considering the fact that they are playing Parma would be away from home, and they're
Parma
playing
at San Siro.
Parma at San Siro. I think that Milan should have enough to get a win against Dinamo. Once Dinamo is out of the equation, unless PSG and Stuttgart decide not to do a biscotto, like the Italians call it, then I don't see the reason why both of them would not qualify.
Well, we cannot round up the Champions League segment without discussing Barcelona's emphatic comeback against Benfica. I was watching that match, and for a moment, it looked like they were playing basketball. I can't remember the Benfica striker's name. Pavlidis scored an hat-trick, and the result overshadowed his hat-trick. Like Inter used to say, when the eye line goes well, you enjoy. When it doesn't go well, you suffer. Inka, what do you make of that match? Barca looked like a fool at a point.
Well, I think that PSG were really Benfica inexperienced.
A lot.
They went 2 goals up at some point, and
twice in the game.
And if it was a more experienced team, you would expect them to take home the win. With about, was it 15-20 minutes left? I think they were even still in the lead.
Less than 15 minutes.
They were even still in the lead. So it's more of an inexperience for me than Barca's. I'm not taking anything away from Barcelona. In as much as Barcelona are brilliant, if they had faced a more experienced team, I don't think that they would have been able to come back the way they did. So a lot has to be said about the inexperience. And I saw a clip of the Benfica manager. I can't remember his name now. The players are very, very giving them a piece of his mind, because I wouldn't want to be.
He has no peace of mind to give. He was leading 4-3, and this man was bringing in Angel Di Maria.
Well, in games
do you want to attack more? with less than 10 minutes to go.
They were not actually trying to attack, but keeping an
They
option on
just
the
needed his
counter.
leadership on the
They
pitch.
needed something to make sure that Barcelona would still have some sort of worry while trying to attack.
Exactly.
That was what Di Maria came in for. You could see his average position was even in a defensive position. So they were trying to contain Barcelona at the same time, give them something to worry about on the counter.
Well, like I usually say, the coach can have the best plan in the world. But at the end of the day, it's still down to the players to execute that plan. If considering, especially when you consider what Ahmed just said, I think it's a beautiful plan. You cannot just decide to sit back against a team like Barcelona. You also have to give them something to worry about so that at times you ease the pressure on your defenders, you ease the pressure on your team. There has to be some sort of attacking threat or a counter-attacking threat. And I think that was the idea behind it. But you would expect that 11 grown men, 11 professional footballers, will be able to bring home a win, especially after going 2 goals up with less than 10 minutes to go. In as much as you would want to blame the coach, I would really say this is mostly on the players for me.
Okay, Inyeka, I'm sure you know a little bit about player contracts. Are there clauses that allows the club to fine players for this kind of performance?
For what?
For this kind of performance?
I do not think so. I don't
I
want to
think
think so. Well, I mean, the football is about many things. You either win, you lose, or you draw. And, the loss or the win can come in any type of way. Yes, there are clauses that can punish players for other things, but certainly not
Misconduct.
for the way that you've lost. Do you
Benfica
understand?
deserve that squad that they deserve a week fine. Moving on, we've discussed the Champions League. We've done a roundup of the leagues. I want us to have a player focus, and on our player focus today, we are talking about a player, a Liverpool legend that I personally feel has been underrated for a while. And that is none other than Mohamed Salah, the Egyptian king. Mohamed Salah today surpassed Thierry Henry on the all-time Premier League goal-scoring chart. He is now the 7th all-time highest goal scorer in the Premier League. He's just a goal behind Frank Lampard in 6th, and he's 8 goals behind Sergio Aguero in 5th. Aside from that, Liverpool's 4th highest goal scorer of all time. I think he is 4 or 5 goals behind the next person, while he is the 2nd highest goal scoring foreigner in the Premier League. What a player Mohamed Salah is. And season after season, he keeps delivering. He's 32, if I'm correct now, and he's still delivering. Mika, what can you tell us about Mohamed Salah? You know him from Serie A.
In fact, I would say that it's made me eat my words because my tweets are littered all over the internet. Over the summer, when was it last summer when it was rumored that Al Nasser there was a club from Saudi Arabia that was actually interested in Salah during the summer, and I was of the opinion that the best time to cash in on him, was at that time. Because I did not think that under a new coach with a new system and considering his age, he might actually have the same impact that he's had over the last few years for Liverpool. But this season is even shown that the last few seasons for Liverpool have been child play compared to what he plans to do this season. I think that if there's any player that gives Africa the best chance of winning Ballon d'Or since George Weah won it, it would have to be Mohamed Salah. And going by his numbers this season, I do not see any
Incredible.
player that is in position to take that away from him. He deserves all the trophies that or all the accolades that he's getting at the moment. Because when you want to put it in perspective, just think about the way that we praise Thierry Henry, the way that we rate Thierry Henry. And this guy has come in as He's just smashed his goal records, and he's done it as a winger, especially. He hasn't done it as a striker. He's done it, possibly in less seasons. I'm not particularly sure about that. Possibly in less number of seasons than Thierry Henry. And, you just have to put him in the same level or in the same category. And I know that we as football fans, we always have this feeling of nostalgia, especially when it comes to older players. And we do not like to compare them to the new generation, thinking that there's nothing they're going to do that's going to ever measure up to anything that the older guys have played. But, there has to be exceptions. Player like Salah would have to be one of those exceptions. He's a very good player, and I really hope that he continues like this because I'd like to see the Ballon d'Or in Africa.
Inka, I'm still coming to put you on the spot with Salah comparison. Ahmed, this season, Salah has one hand on the Premier League. That is like saying he has two fingers on the Ballon d'Or. What more does he need to do individually and collectively as a team to win the Ballon d'Or?
Come again, please.
What more do you think Salah should do this season to win the Ballon d'Or, both individually and collectively?
Well, many times winning the Ballon d'Or doesn't have to do only with your performance and your club's performance. Sometimes you need a lot of things to go your way. We've had numerous seasons where we've had players with crazy individual performances, and at the end of the day, there is someone elsewhere who has a bit of luck with, let's say, club achievements or circumstances that would actually make them go home with the award. There are many examples with Schneider, who failed in 2010. Instead, we had Messi winning the award. There were other instances with Iniesta.
But Salah.
But this time around, how much payout does he have? Because this is not the first time we've had this red hot Salah, you understand? So you need a lot of other factors to go in your way. And quite unfortunately, Mbappe is getting rock hot at the right time. But we have a long way to do. The season is still very much, there is a lot of games to come. There is the African Nations Cup coming up towards the end of the year. This is still January.
In December.
So he has a whole lot to do. And quite all right, he's on the right direction. They are top of the Premiership, top of the Champions League group, but it doesn't end there. He needs to at least win both to give himself a huge chance of winning the award. But I must say the road is still very long. So at this point, I could actually call it a goose chase to start making predictions of Ballon d'Or winner as this early into the year. So there is a lot of work to be done, but he's currently on the right note.
I'm inclined to agree with Ahmed. I think that he's on the right track, just like Ahmed said. The Champions League plays a very huge role in who wins the Ballon d'Or at the end of the year. So I think that regardless of how Mohamed Salah performs this year, if you have Real Madrid winning the Champions League at the end of the season, then it's very likely that a Real Madrid player could get the award.
Even a Bayern.
Exactly. The road is still long. We'll see where he is at the end of the season. And then also, when 2025, 2026 begins. But like I said earlier, the numbers are in his favor at the moment. I'm talking about goals and assists now. We've got more goals and assists than Vinicius Junior, for example. I think Rafinha, who many are even saying is in outstanding form. So the numbers are in his favor. We just need to hope that he keeps it up and crowns it with some trophies.
Okay, Inka, Salah or Sterling? Salah or Sterling?
Is that meant to be a comparison?
No, I'm putting you on the spot now. Salah or Sterling?
What's pound sterling?
That's disrespectful.
That's quite disrespectful to
That's disrespectful to Salah. Okay.
This is because when we say something is disrespectful, we're not particularly saying that Sterling is a bad player, but compared to Salah, Sterling is not at that level. Sterling is really not at that level.
At this point, you should compare Sterling to a Martinelli, not Salah.
Salah or Hazard?
Well, I'll still pick Salah. I know that Hazard is a very beautiful footballer. Hazard is the kind of player that you want to keep watching over because of the tricks, because of how beautiful he is on the ball. But at the end of the day, football is about winning games, it's about scoring goals and not conceding. And if you have a Salah in your team that guarantees you at least one goal before the match even starts, then you have to stick with him. So I will go with Salah all day, every day.
Salah or Bale?
Salah or Gareth Bale, because of how consistent Salah has been and for how long he's done it. I would still say Salah. I think that Bale was also a fantastic player in his prime, but that prime was often cut short by injuries. He was often injured when he was available and informed. We knew what he could do. But in terms of delivering on a consistent basis without injuries and having that guaranteed delivery, I would still say Salah.
Salah or Henry?
Sorry, I think Ahmed
You
should
are
answer
getting.
that.
Henry has that. Henry
No,
has it this time.
Salah or Thierry Henry? Ahmed.
Thierry Henry.
Well, one is a
Why?
striker, the other one is a winger.
Yinka, you have to answer. This one you are not doing. You are not sitting on the bench.
One is a striker, the other one is a winger. But a gun to my head, if you ask me to pick one,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a very, very big bias, or I'm very sentimental when it comes to Thierry Henry. I'll say that one of the reasons that I actually fell in love with the Premier League was because of Thierry Henry. In fact, there was just a tiny bit of chance of me becoming an Arsenal fan
Thank
because
God
of Thierry
you were
Henry.
not an Arsenal fan.
I thank God as well. I thank God for my life as well.
You
But
would have hated
because of
Thierry
Thierry
Henry
Henry,
all your life for what he made you do.
I could have become an Arsenal fan, and because of what he did, obviously, what he did for Arsenal, what he did for France, and he still left Arsenal, went to Barcelona, even though he was past his prime, and still contributed to that treble winning, or was it? How many trophies did
Yeah,
they win in a season?
treble,
In a year? I
sextuple,
think it was
sextuple.
six trophies in 1 year. And he still contributed his part to that achievement, scored goals, delivered assists. And you just have to give it to Thierry Henry. And that's just a personal opinion. I wouldn't argue with you if you picked Salah, for example. But for me, it will always be Henry.
Well, fair point. At least Chelsea fans especially can rest now. It is Salah over Hazard. As for Arsenal fans, we'll keep checking. Salah or Henry. We'll keep checking. Okay, thank you guys for the player focus. It's always interesting when we discuss players individually like this, and especially players that are doing fantastically well. And next, we'll move to the coach focus. Like in the player focus, where we've discussed a player that is doing well. In the coach focus, we are discussing a manager that is, I won't say is not doing well. I would say it's neither here nor there. Ahmed, calm down now. I would say it's neither here nor there. In the coach focus, we'll be talking about Thiago Motta of Juventus. Before I hand over the mic to Ahmed, Thiago Motta is the current manager of Juventus. Juventus have played 22 matches in the league this season, 13 draws, 8 wins, and 1 loss today. They've been neither here or there in the Champions League also. And the jury are out for Thiago Motta, especially considering how much players he got in the summer. Some would argue he didn't get enough. Some would argue he is not good enough. Ahmed, is it the players that is not good enough or he is not good enough?
I must say, and I would back my points with a bit of facts, that Thiago Motta is an average coach. He's not new to coaching per se. This is his 4th team. His first senior coaching job was with Genoa in 2019. Unfortunately, he got the axe after exactly just 2 months. So in the season 2021-2022,
was that the season he was doing 272?
Exactly. That was the year he made that very famous statement. He said he saw the picture as horizontal and he would rather play a 2-7-2 formation. That comment
Battery,
really,
Albert
really.
Einstein.
So in 2021-2022 season, he got appointed by Spezia. That was his first full season in coaching. You understand? He struggled a bit, but expectation was quite low. And luckily for him, he ended the season by avoiding relegation a couple of games towards the end of the season. The very next season, 2022-2024, he came into Bologna. So that was where he started to actually make a bit of positive wave. His first year with Bologna was quite impressive by their standard. He actually broke their points and position record. He ended the season with 54 points and ninth position. That was Bologna's record as at then. The very next season, which was last season, 23-24, he improved on that, ended in the top 5 position. You understand? That was where the positive rates started coming in, and the big team started looking at him. So now he's in Juve. The expectations are higher compared to Bologna. If you look at his statistic, Bologna and Juve, they are quite similar. But little was said about the situation back in Bologna because the expectation is not as much as what we have in Juve. His winning
Yeah.
rates at Bologna was just 46%, but now in Juve it is a little lesser. His win percent rate is 40%, but now we have cries of inconsistency, too many draws, lack of enough wins that is expected in a big team like Juventus. So it is based on these points that I've concluded that I think he's an average coach. So to say, I don't expect him to make a difference in the big side. So that might change in the future, but as of right now, Thiago Motta is quite average.
Do you see him making it up, Ahmed?
Considering that he's getting enough backing, as much as they spent a lot in the winter, before the start of the season in the summer, now he has added Kolo Muani to.
Inca, Thiago Motta. Before you answer, last summer, Milan wanted him. Juve wanted him. Napoli at some point wanted him. What has changed?
So I'm going to slightly differ from Ahmed, and I'm not going to go as far as calling him an average coach. What I would say is that he is underperforming, obviously. He's not performing up to the standards that you would expect of a Juventus coach. I would also say that based on my observations of the man himself, I think that is what I would like to call a philosophy coach, quote unquote. Coaches that live and die by the way that they want to play and do not like to adapt to, the conditions that surround them at the time that they find themselves. The reason I've said that is that if you look at the way his Bologna team played last season, they did well by keeping the ball a lot. They had a striker that always dropped deep to help with build up and also link up play.
Joshua
To then
Zexi.
free their very fast wingers, which could be either Ndoi or Stolini. Who else did they? I think it was
Salameta.
Salamaka. He had wingers that could fly, so to speak. And I think that because that worked for him last season, they sort of decided to stick with that and say, "This is the way that I want to play." But when you coach in a team like Juventus, where expectations are quite different or way different, not just quite different, way different from a team like Bologna, then you have to adapt. You have to show why they've paid, huge money to bring you from where I think, okay, they did not pay a release clause, but they had to bring him from Bologna and they needed to be very patient to get him, over to Turin. So he's been given a squad that does not quite match the philosophy that he has. And I'm not saying this to say that the squad that he has is a bad squad. I am saying that, say for example, he wants a striker that likes to link up play. He got a Vlahovic at the beginning of the season. Before it was even announced as coach of Juventus, I was already making fun of the fact that he would need to play Vlahovic the way he played with Zexi, and I knew that was not going to work. but it looked like banter at the time. He's got quite fast wingers, but he's not got the striker to link up with those wingers. Again, this is not an excuse, and in fact, I'm painting this as a negative because it just means that you are not particularly willing to
Pragmatic.
adapt. Yes, you are too focused on one way of playing. You are not willing to adapt. Now, I think that there are signs that it could improve. It's just that everything would depend on whether they make Champions League this season or not. I think that Juventus are struggling a lot financially and they need next season's Champions League a lot. Like that, I wouldn't say their life depends on it, but they need to qualify for the Champions League. Otherwise, they might need to start dismantling the project before the project even starts. And when you've given a coach players worth almost 300 million, and he's not delivering, he's not being able to make champions. And out of those players, you are now saying you want to sell those players, you want to sell some of those players again, then it means that instead of taking steps forward, he's actually going to end up taking steps back. So the way I see it is this: I do not think that Thiago Motta is a bad coach or average coach. I just think that he's a coach that is too stubborn and unwilling to adapt to the situation around them. That's just my honest opinion.
Okay, he has been linked with a reunion with Joshua Zexi. Let's assume that happens this January or it happens in the summer. Zexi is also struggling in United, so it's a match made in heaven if they reunite. Do you think him getting Zexi does how much improvement do you think you would see in the way his team plays? Because this season already, he has dished Vlahovic as a striker. He has played Nico Gonzalez as a striker. Yildiz has played as a striker. Mbangula has played as a striker. All just to get that link-up feel. Do you think Joshua Zexi takes him a step?
Well, considering the fact that they've worked together, in the past, and they worked together quite well, one would expect that Joshua Zexi would be an upgrade to that attack, especially because of the way that, Thiago Motta wants to play. Whether Zexi also has the mentality to step up as well is what I do not know, because it's gone to Man United, which is quite different in terms of stature to Bologna, and he hasn't lived up as well, even though I know that his style of play is quite different from what they play in the Premier League. But one thing that I know is that if you look at the Juventus team this season, defending is not particularly a problem for them. At least the stats suggest that. They've conceded 19 goals in 22 games. That's less than a goal per game. I think that where they really struggle is scoring goals. You would always count on them in most cases to score one goal, but you cannot count on them to, kill off games by scoring 2, 3. So I do not think they even average up to 2 goals per game this season. With a striker that is as good with linking up play as Zexi is, I think that might help them, especially when you consider how fast their wingers are. They've got Conceição, they've got Yildiz, they've got Nico Gonzalez, I think
Mbangula.
Bangula, and I think there's someone else that I might be missing. So they've got really fast wingers that will suit the way that Thiago Motta wants to play. I do not think Zexi would join, but if he does join, I would think that it would be an upgrade for their attack.
Okay, finally on Thiago Motta, he was gifted Koopmeiners from Atalanta, 63 million buy. Koopmeiners has underperformed spectacularly. He's not creating goals, he's not scoring goals, he's not playmaking, he's not recycling. Is it a case of wrong player, right coach, or right player, wrong coach? Ahmed, then Yinka would give his closing comment. The fraudulent club selling players. Yinka, over to you. Ahmed is confused.
So with Koopmeiners, I've never really been a fan. I don't think you would find anywhere where any statement or tweet or post where I've said Koopmeiners is a fantastic player. He's a fantastic player.
Either.
I acknowledge the fact that he gets the output that you require. That's in terms of goals and assists. Me not being a fan of Koopmeiners is more of not being a fan of midfielders that when I do not really like when you mention midfielders, and the first thing that comes to mind is the goals and assists. For some reason, when that is the only thing that you point out in the midfielder, and not the way that is able to control the game or bring everybody into the game, it sort of stands out for me. It's something that puts me off, and that's just me. And I've noticed that with Koopmeiners over the years, even when he was at AZ Alkmaar, the first thing that players will mention is, or fans will mention is, oh, he scored so number of goals. They would not tell you if that guy, he dribbles a lot, or he does. Even if you tell me he dribbles a lot, at least I'm fine with that. Or he controls the ball, he's a very good passer, is this, is that. And this when you mention Kevin De Bruyne, you mention his passes. When you mention a Nicolo Barella, you mention his ability to do, back and forth on the field and also, control the game. When you mention players like Pedri, Gavi, midfielders across Europe, it is not their goals and assists that stands out first. So when you mention the midfielder to me, and that's the first thing that stands out, I'm always like, what's going on? Let's have a closer look. So, and I think that with midfielders like that, they need a specific type of coach to actually bring out the best out of them, to mask some of the deficiencies that they might have in terms of, coordinating the team, because midfielders are actually responsible for coordinating the team. They are the ones that link attack with defense. They are the ones that determine the tempo of the game. So if you do not have all of that, and the only thing that I'm not saying that's the only thing that put mine out, but if that's the first thing that stands out, then for me it begins to look like a problem. And that is what I think is suffering from at Juventus at the moment, because people are expecting that, oh, this goals that you scored at AZ Alkmaar, this goals that you scored at Atalanta, why have you not started scoring those goals for us at Juventus? Forgetting that he may have had coaches that masked some of his deficiencies and actually brought out the best out of him. Because even when he's not scoring for Juventus, he's not really doing much. He's not controlling the game. He's not linking up play. He's not doing. And that's one of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of Bruno Fernandes, even though, he scores a lot and assists a lot. But,
Inca,
well,
you are looking for trouble.
I'm not going to hide that now. But when
You are
the
looking
first
for
thing that stands out
trouble.
for me is your goals and your assists, then I just, take a step back to check and say, okay, what's going on? Let's have a closer look. That's all.
Personally, I consider Koopmeiners a system player, and he has to be in a particular system to function. And personally, I am not a big fan of midfielders that play in a 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 system. I think the 3-5-2 system masks a lot of deficiencies, especially for midfielders. Ahmed,
Well,
don't implicate me.
for every rule, there's an
They are
exception.
exceptional. They are exceptional players. Personally, I will pick centre backs in a 3 at the back system ahead of midfielders, because I feel the midfielders get protected a lot. You have the strikers dropping deep to receive the ball. There's a lot of chaos in the middle of the pitch, so
But
you
for
really
me,
can't see you can't see the individual spies of those midfielders. That's just the way I feel personally. Unlike a 4-3-3 system, for instance, in a 4-3-3 system, the responsibilities are distinct. You know who the defensive midfielder is. You know who is orchestrating. You know who is box to box. That's just my personal opinion. Inter, you want to say something?
well, I want to say for me, I think that the system, the 3-man defense system covers the defenders more than it covers midfielders. But I think that the system is designed to protect defenders more than it protects any other position on the field. You have wing backs covering for the defenders. You have midfielders covering for the defenders. You have the other wing backs covering. Basically, you have 3 defenders, 2 wing backs, 3 people in front of them. It's difficult. And when they now decide to be compact and not like Simone Inzaghi's 3-5-2 system, when they
Conte,
play proper compact match Allegri or Diego
Conte.
Simeone 3-5-2, it's difficult to break them down. I always say that the most comfortable that I've been since I've been an Inter fan was under Conte, because I knew for a fact that if we score first against you, then you are done for. I could easily relax and just watch you try to break us down, knowing that you would not break us down unless we make a stupid mistake. So that's how compact the 3-5-2 system is.
Well, enough has been said about Thiago Motta. I think we should just spice it up with the stay or go section. So our first stay or go section will be about Juventus. So I would mention the player. Yinka will tell me whether to stay or go. Ahmed will tell me whether to stay or go. If it's controversial, you would explain yourself. You will explain yourself to the Juventus fan base. Are we ready?
I must first add that a lot of these Juve players are new. So it's difficult to say whether they should stay or go. We have to give them time.
You can say stay, but I'm giving you more time. Then we will come back. They will do it. But for now,
Okay.
stay or go. So the first player on my list is the Gregor.
Gregory,
Stay for two of you.
yes. Unless they want to sell him, of course. But stay.
That's it. Wesley McKennie,
For his versatility, I'll say stay. Yes.
Manuel Locatelli,
Hmm.
local.
Stay as a backup. Stay as a backup.
Douglas Lewis. He has not offered anything.
I think if it's going to work out for him, you would have started seeing signs. And I do not think I might be wrong, but I do not think that wait. I do not think that
Ahmed, wait.
Juve have a very great record with Brazilian players. I might be wrong, but I do not think that they've done really well with Brazilian players. No, Juventus in particular.
Timothy Weah, Ahmed, Timothy Weah, Conceição, Akadismili.
Throw away.
That was like
The way he can stay as a backup. He can stay.
Dusan Vlahovic.
Being
Inter needed to drink water on that one.
that they can for what he offers, they can get someone way cheaper or way less than 12 million a year.
So you should go.
In fact, they should flog him out of Turin.
Ahmed, Dusan Vlahovic, stay or go. Wow. Koopmeiners,
You can give him
Yudis, De Piero,
golden boy.
Turam, Joan Cabal, the left back.
I think it was decent before his injury.
Yeah, stay. Kalulu,
Stay. I didn't hear Bremer.
Bremer,
Bremer obviously stays.
I believe he stays too. I think he's out for the season. ACL.
They can't even sell him even if they wanted to.
So, Douglas Lewis is the only controversial answer. Ahmed says he should stay. Yinka says he should go. What is wanted him where? What is special about him?
But
I think
Ahmed,
he should go.
you are failing to see something. We are not saying that Douglas Luiz is a bad player. We're saying that based on what you've seen him do at Juventus so far, do you think it's a good relationship? Do you think it will work out? Do you think it's worth staying?
You people should not agree. I like it like that. Thank you.
Well, I think this also points to the fact that Juventus actually have a very good squad, or at least above decent squad.
Yeah, they do. They are building a good squad. But Yinka, I would like to ask, if for any reason Thiago Motta does not make Champions League this season, do you think he stays or he goes?
Well, I wanted to mention earlier that I do not think that they will make top four. I think that 3 spots are already reserved for Napoli, Inter, and
Atalanta.
So there's 1 spot left to fight for, and you have Lazio, Milan,
Fiorentina,
Juventus, possibly Fiorentina, and even Bologna fighting for that spot. Their only chance, this evening, their best chance, and they're still 3 points behind Juventus with a game in hand. So their best chance of qualifying for Champions League next season would be if Italy gets 5 spots for the UCL. Apart from that, I do not see them making top. In fact, I think Milan with 6 points behind has a bigger chance of making it.
So if they don't make it, is Motta going or staying?
I wouldn't complain if they sack him. Personally, I want them to give him 1 more year because I think that the signs are there. But if they do not make it, then there's no point giving him 1 more year because, like I mentioned earlier, it will affect them. They'll have to lose a few players, maybe even water down on the quality of that squad. And because he's a philosophy player, he needs a certain level of player, a certain, type of player or a certain type of squad in order to perform. Without money, it might be difficult to do that, especially in a big team. In a small team like Bologna, you can get away with drawing 12 games, 15 games. While Juve, no one is going to allow that.
Okay,